Hey guys, good morning. It's Mr. B, and it is Friday, January 8th, 2021. Today we are going to be reviewing fossils. This was one of the two topics that we talked about at the beginning part of the year. This is what we ended the year with, so kind of in November and December, if you guys remember. So we're going to review today. We're going to watch a short little brain pop together. We're going to talk about what a fossil is, and then fossil layers, okay, and how we identify older fossils versus newer fossils, and fossil changes over time, environment changing over time, as evidenced by fossils. So we'll talk about all that stuff, but let's start off with this short video, and we're going to watch it together.
Not a fossil? Hey, why are you digging a hole in the backyard? I don't think that's a fossil. I think it belongs to the Rottweiler next door. Dear Tim and Moby, what makes something a fossil? From Ross. Well, a fossil is a remnant of an organism. Usually, fossils are at least several thousand years old and found in the ground. Not every organism gets fossilized after it dies. As a matter of fact, it's a pretty rare occurrence.
So let's stop right there and talk about that really quick, because that's a really interesting and important point. Not everything becomes a fossil, right? We talked about this a little bit before winter break, but there's got to be specific conditions in order for a fossil to be made, right? An organism has to die, that's the first condition, but it has to die in a specific and really intentional spot, right? And it's got to be buried and buried by layers and layers of silt and sediment that create sediment over it and compressed down over time. Okay, now it's got to be a specific set of occurrences, and like he said, it's a very rare set of occurrences for a fossil to be created. Let's listen in a little bit longer.
Fossilization has to start off with the right circumstances, like a quick burial. This is a body fossil, part of the original organism that's been preserved. It's a bug that got trapped in amber, a type of sticky tree sap. Over time, the sap hardened, and we were left with this little keepsake. Body fossils are usually found in places where bacteria, insects, and the other things that cause decay aren't able to thrive. They form when an animal dies in the desert, or gets frozen in ice, or gets trapped in a tar pit. Yeah, well, body fossils are really rare. Trace fossils, like these footprints, are the most common fossil type. Trace fossils can include animal tracks, nests, bite marks, even animal poop. Other types of fossils form when an animal dies and is immediately covered by earth, mud, or sand. The covering slows decay down to a crawl and eventually turns to solid rock. The hardest parts of the animal, stuff like bones, teeth, and shells, don't decay for thousands of years. When they finally do, they've left a lasting impression in the rock. That's a mold fossil, a hollow print. Sometimes, water will bubble up through the earth, filling the mold with minerals. Over time, the minerals harden into rock, leaving a cast fossil. A cast fossil looks just like the original bone.
Okay, so this is an important point. I want to stop right here too. He just named a few different types of fossils, right? So he said a body fossil is when we have kind of a big specimen, right? If a little insect was covered in amber and it was or tree sap and it was hardened into amber, we have that kind of complete intact fossil there of that insect or that bug or small animal. And then you could also have an animal buried in ice or buried in the desert that is preserved very nicely because of the conditions. Then he talked about trace fossils, right? Footprints, leaf imprints. Okay, he even said poop was a type of trace fossil. So all those are different types of fossils. And then you have this kind too, which is very interesting. This is a cast fossil. And then finally, it kind of turns into a mold fossil, right? A cast fossil is a type of imprint trace fossil, right, that you'll see. Um, it's kind of the outline of maybe of a shell or something like that. And then a mold fossil is when water kind of bubbles up through that cast or that imprint, and then minerals fill that up and it hardens. Now, that's a specific word that I want you to remember. This is an important word. That process is called petrification. Okay, where a living organism or living material over time, I guess it would be a dead material at the time, but what was once living over time slowly changes and hardens changes into rock, which is petrification, which is that process, right? The decomposing the organism's flesh, bones, whatever it was, decomposed and it's gone now. It left that area, kind of empty, hollow area where it was. And then slowly over time, minerals and water fill that up and they harden and become rock. And that's what we get as a fossil, right? So that's petrification. I want you to remember that word, petrification, the slow process of turning something into rock.
Shell. Right, of course, there are also carbon-based fossil fuels. All of the oil, gas, and coal on Earth was formed from the remains of fossilized plants and animals. For example, way back, like 300 million years ago, much of the planet was covered by tropical swamps. When the trees and plants that lived there died, they drifted to the bottom of the swamp. There, they slowly decomposed and formed a soggy, spongy substance called peat. Eventually, the peat got buried under layers of dirt and rock. Heat and pressure took their toll, and after millions of years, the peat turned into coal. Anyway, we can learn a lot from fossils. By looking closely at the fossil record, we can discover when and where lots of different organisms lived. In fact, we can learn about the entire history of life on Earth. Oh, the fossil record is just a fancy term for the sum total of what we know about fossils. Yeah, that's not going to work. It has to be under extreme pressure for millions of...
And see, Moby turned that into a fossil there. Now, it's important to remember, and I'm gonna go over to this real quick because we're gonna talk about this in just a second here. Now, it's important to remember that we can tell how an environment has changed over time based on the fossils that we find in that area. For instance, if we were to go out here in Stonewall's backyard by the playground, you might dig in the dirt for a little bit and you might find some shell fossils. Yeah, some shell fossils. Now, shell fossils are organisms, or shells are organisms that don't typically live on land, do they? No, they're found in water, lakes, rivers, streams, oceans. So that tells us that at some point in time in history, millions of years ago, millions of years ago, that this area was covered in a body of water. Okay? And we can dig deeper to find out when that was and if the environment changed before that. So you might find a shell fossil here, but then you might find a land fossil, a land animal fossil below that. So you can see how the environment has changed over time. So maybe it started out as maybe a plains area or a forest, and then millions of years happened, and then over time that water came in, and now it's a big body of water, and now we're back into kind of a plains area, forested land area. Okay, so environments change over time, and we can tell that by the fossil layers and the types of fossils that we see or find in the ground. Okay. Now, it's also important to remember this last fact before we talk about what you guys are going to do today, that the deeper you go, right, the deeper you go, the older the fossils are. So the closer to the surface you are, the newer the layers are, right? So if you maybe dig down, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, those are the oldest fossils, right? And as you go up, you can kind of look at the different layers. That's what happens closer to our timeline, right? Closer to our time. The further up you go, or the closer to the surface you go. So today, what you're going to do is you're going to click on this link, and it should be in Google Classroom. It should say Science Review Game, or it could even be called Science Exit Slip today. But you're going to scroll down once you click on this link. You're going to scroll down to this game called Layers of Time, and you're going to start it. Now, this is something that you guys have played before. Okay, I think there was a day maybe in November or December where you guys played this game, but we're reviewing today. So you can choose a level of difficulty. I'm just going to go with medium here. And you are going to sort these layers. You want to put the oldest at the bottom, and then you're going to sort the layers based on the fossils you find, right? So if this is the oldest layer, you know the oldest is going to go at the bottom. Then you kind of match up the layers with the fossils that are there. So you want to find, okay, I want to find another layer with this fossil in it because I know that happened next. Okay, so now I got these two fossils taken care of. These are matching. But now I have this fossil over here, and I need to find a layer with that fossil in it. And it looks like this layer had that fossil in it. Okay, so I'm going to keep on going, keep on matching until I find all the layers where all the fossils are taken care of. Okay, and I've matched up all the layers. Now you can kind of see now, as I've matched up all the layers, this conifer fossil is found in all layers, right? Trilobites were found in the last two layers. The next two layers, this fossil was found. Protosaurs, and then you have also a Coelophysis, which I don't really know what that is, but that's found in that layer too, and it kind of goes up from there, right? Now you can kind of see here, Mr. B, maybe I made a mistake here. Maybe this one should go down here. I don't know. Maybe that looks right? I'm not sure. Let's see. I think that looks a little bit better now. Yeah. Now all the fossils are matching up. Okay, so I'm going to click out of that and go back to this. So your job today, once you're finished with this video, okay, and you guys will be in just a second, is to go to that link, play the science game. You play it for 10 minutes or so. Try the different levels out, different difficulties. And we'll see you back here in just a few minutes. We're going to start math soon. Hope you guys are having an awesome Friday. We'll see you in a little bit.